So I've had this truck up and running for multiple years now. I think it's been almost 5 years. Remember, I uploaded a video a while ago that was a walk around, kind of an in-depth walk around of what I did to this thing. So now I had it for on the road 5 years and thought I'd show some updates of what I've done to it. Just kind of over the last 5 years, things here and there to try to continue to make it better. So for a rundown, I mean, you can go look at my old video. It's like 15 minutes long. That's pretty in depth of everything I did. But rundown, it's an '89 V3500, 1-ton crew cab, long bed. So I swapped an 8.1 liter. It's out of a 2005. Mated behind that is a GM NV4500, and then behind that is the factory MP205, Dana 60 front, 14 bolt rear that are factory with 410 gears factory. And then, you know, it's got a moderate lift. I kind of showed that in the last video, so you can go look at all that. Literally same rims and tires that have been on it. These BFGs have actually lasted quite a long time, which I've been pretty happy with. Granted, I don't put a crazy amount of miles on this thing. It literally sits in my shop, and I drive it when I want to or when I need to tow something. But other than that, it sits in my shop. So, I mean, that helps. Also, too, the paint job that I did, I said in the last video, that's my own spray paint job, has actually held up pretty darn well for almost 5 years. Again, staying in a shop all year long does, I believe, has helped that for sure. If it was outside, I'm sure there'd be a lot more fading and crap, but I think it still looks pretty good. So I'll start in the front of I'm gonna go to the back of things that I've done to it since then. First off, put a Badland winch on the front. Kind of nice. Really haven't had to use it that many times, but it's nice to have for sure. I have had to use it. So on the 8.1 liter, just recently, I had a roller lifter that was seizing up on me, and it ate into the stock cam a little bit. It was still rolling and functioning, but started to get a squeak and squeal and tore it all apart. And sure enough, found out that the lifter was starting to eat itself. So I ended up getting a BP201 cam from Raylar Engineering and a full new set of roller lifters, and swapped those in. By the way, the lifters are the exact same part number as like the Vortec 454. So that's pretty good. So the other thing I did is on the factory intake, there's a common thing that you can do on these, which is do a modification to them. When you pull them off, you can cut the bottom off, and then you remove a big baffle that's on the inside. Do a little bit of porting on the intake side, and then you weld the bottom back on. So I actually had this intake. I have another video, or I have another truck where I did a carb swap on an 8.1, and this intake was actually off of that 8.1 that I carb swapped that was already modified. So I slapped that thing on here, and then it also had the PCV delete on it. So the 8.1's, the PCV system is literally a little tube hanging out on the bottom of the intake that it draws up, you know, crankcase ventilation basically, and then shoves it back into the intake. There's a little port on the intake where the throttle body bolts up that then recirculates it back into the intake. Well, so I deleted that and capped that, and then also when I put on there, it might be kind of hard to see, but I swapped to a 90mm throttle body. So there is a 3-bolt to 4-bolt adapter bolted up there, and then a 90mm throttle body off of a late LS. Obviously, I can't remember what the size of the stock one. It's like 72 or 78, I can't remember, is the stock throttle body size. So I did a 90mm, obviously to get a lot more airflow in there. So the big thing that you have to do when you do that, though, is you have to do one of these X-Link adapters, which is a little harness that plugs into the side of the throttle body and then plugs into your factory port on your existing harness for these 8.1s. as far as I know, one of the reasons, I mean, I don't know the full in-depth of it. There's a write-up online of somebody that kind of explained it. One of the major things is that the throttle blades turn the opposite way on the late model throttle bodies versus the 8.1. And so if all you did was just bolt this on and plug it in, your TPS system would be all out of whack. Your computer wouldn't know what the heck was going on, and it doesn't run worth a crap. So you got to get one of those X-Link adapters when you do that on these 8.1s. But you know, then I had to do something for crankcase ventilation because I deleted the PCV system. So I just did one of those filters up on the cap. A bunch of people always say that they're like, oh, you need to do a catch can and for any residual oil that you might have in the flow. And it's like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to go, and it's a great way to ensure that you're not gonna have any mess. But I mean, this oil fill tube is quite a bit above the intake, for one. Two, there is a windage tray, you know, stock windage tray underneath the intake, and the amount of actual oil residue that gets up this high is very minimal. So I mean, there's been many guys that have run this and it's worked just fine. So that's what I did. So I mean, stock rocker still, didn't change anything there. Everything else is pretty much the same as the last video, as far as, you know, cooling and all that type of stuff. But just got this thing on the road with the cam and intake swap and throttle body swap. So I do need to get another retune on it, just to ensure that, you know, everything's good. I might end up swapping to bigger injectors as well. We'll see. I'm gonna talk with the tuner and see how that works. But anyways, that's kind of the motor. Trans is the same. Nothing with the trans. Nothing with the nothing different with the trans. It's still an V3500. Nothing different with the you know, anything else in the drivetrain. Nothing else is different. One thing I did put on this is a set of airbags. I added a set of airbags onto the rear, and I just have them up to little valves. I'd like to one day possibly put a motor, you know, the pump and a motor and stuff, so I can fill them from the cab, but I don't know, we'll see. It'd be nice if that was one day. Added some rear lights on the bumper, added a different tow hitch, one that was rated for more. I have a truck bed camper that I put in the back of here, plus tow one of my crawlers behind it, and it does it really, really well. Oh, the other thing I did is I got rid of the drum brakes and converted to rear discs. There's a lot of companies out there now that make those, so that's, you know, that's no big whoop. But I was having the drums were giving me troubles, and I was like, I ain't messing with those dumb things. I'm just gonna, you know, replace them with discs. Interior is virtually the same. Still pretty clean. So I don't know if I ever said, so I still have the dual factory tanks on this. I think in the last video I said I have the driver tank set up that's what runs the motor. Well, the passenger tank here is my storage tank. So this is the way I can still have 40 gallons of fuel. But what I did is I left the TBI pump in there and ran the feed line over to the driver pump, and then I hooked up the pump just to this toggle switch, and the toggle switch actually has a light on it that when you turn it on, kind of like a dummy light, so I know that it's on. And then I hooked up a gauge to the sending unit too. So I have my factory gauge, which is hooked up to the driver tank. This gauge is hooked up to the passenger tank. So when I'm driving down the road, and if I see I'm getting low on the driver tank, I can literally just flip the switch and watch. It's kind of interesting to watch watch that gauge go down and watch the gauge on my dash go up as I'm driving down the road. So that's actually kind of cool. It works really good. I mean, I'll say probably the best way is to do an actual, you know, bourbon tank in the rear or something like that. This is kind of the best way I could figure to keep the saddle tanks and not have to do the bourbon tank in the rear. You do have to kind of pay attention so that you don't, one, either overfill your driver tank or run this one dry and run the pump dry. So, I mean, when you're running it, you do kind of have to pay attention, and that kind of sucks, but whatever, it's not that bad. So it's pretty good. I also installed a deck. I actually got that for free from my father-in-law. I wasn't going to do that. I was just going to leave the factory one, but he gave it to me. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll put it in. And then I also, when doing that, put new speakers in the back. And it sounds pretty good enough. I'm not huge on sound system crap, but I mean, interior still is really good in this thing. But anywho, always getting better, always doing something to it. That's the fun of these things.